Коллеги, участники нашей дискуссии.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And we're opening Hub E, and today we're going to speak about the way to the global market and the development of big Eurasia. In order to discuss the importance of the topics, I'm going to give you some statistical figures. So the growth rates of intellectual property are higher than the growth rates of GDP. And the revenue from the exports of IP products have increased 3 times for the latest 13 years. And this is, of course, all figures, and even 1% matters when it can be interpreted in absolute figures. It's 1.5 times higher. And we understand the significance of this figure. For instance, in the general election, presidential elections in the Ukraine, the difference between some candidates was that small. And we are now following the election campaign in the Ukraine as fans follow Dom 2 TV programs. And now the whole world is exchanging information. The whole world goes digital, and there are 155 countries that have joined international bodies that go global, and 98% from royalty and dividends are concentrated in developed countries. And Russia is an exporter of importer of intellectual program, a slip of the tongue, Freudian slip. And in Russia concentrates 5% of all researchers of the world, but the revenue from IP is only 0.3%. And Russia is not the only outsider in Eurasia. This is a general topic which is acute for countries of bigger Eurasia. And of course, the European Union and Russia are trying to harmonize, to bridge legislation when it comes down to the protection of the IP rights. More than 10 official documents were adopted pertaining to the protection of the IP. And the documents are in place, and practical mechanisms are to be elaborated. And during our session, we are going to speak about digital innovations and their development in Eurasia. Will there be a Silk Road for the digital economy, or it will be a hard way up? So I am going to introduce our panelists, participants of our discussion. Людмила Тесемкина, General Director of Just Logic Company. Darya Lipatova, Head of Šelkový International Acceleration Track. Maksat Kalimadayev, Vice President of the National Academy of Sciences of Sciences of Kazakhstan. Paul Neum, Chief Operating Officer from Singapore. Anatoly Semenov, Ombudsman for IP, representative of the President of the Russian Federation in this field of intellectual property. Oksana Kurechkina, Managing Director, Managing Partner of Law for Business. Kadir Kulturush, President of the Eurasia Blockchain Association. And we are expecting Clara Owen to join us from Israel. Unfortunately, I cannot see her in the audience. Alexander Lebedev, Director General of Big Asia TV channel. And we are also expecting another participant, Oleg Masyaja, Deputy Director General, SK Forum. And I do hope that more participants will join our panel soon. So I would like to warn or ask all panelists to stick to the time schedule, which is 5 to 7 minutes. And the first question I would address to our colleague from Singapore. I listened to your presentation that the Singapore Academy of Law is ready to provide assistance to Russian startups and provide some legal assistance to startups. Is it really so?
First of all, I'd like to explain a little bit about the organization that I'm from. So the Singapore Academy of Law is the promotion and development agency for Singapore's legal sector. Our president is the Chief Justice of Singapore. And one of the programs that we have, or within our mandate, is to support the growth and the development of the legal industry in Singapore, which includes the upskilling of our legal professionals, as well as helping with the development of our legal enterprises, which includes our law firms, in-house legal departments, and legal technology startups. So to advance this mandate, one of the programs that we are running under the Singapore Academy of Law is called the Future Law Innovation Program, also known as FLIP. And I'm the executive director of the subsidiary that was established to run FLIP in Singapore, called SAL Ventures. So FLIP is Singapore's national program to develop a legal technology ecosystem in Singapore. And in order for us to do that, we have a multi-pronged approach to encourage lawyers, technologists, entrepreneurs to come together to co-create new solutions that can help with the delivery of legal services in the future economy. Now, we recognize that Singapore, being a very small country, we have a limited talent pool, and also our market is actually quite small. So in order for Singapore to develop itself into a global hub for legal services, we do need to collaborate with the international community and to tap on a much larger talent pool. And that includes reaching out to international legal technology startups and enterprises, encouraging them to come to Singapore, to use Singapore as a gateway or a jumping off point into the rest of the ASEAN market and even into Greater Asia. So within the FLIP, the Future Law Innovation Program, we have 3 tracks. The first track is more targeted at law firms, especially the smaller ones, and that is all about helping them to increase their efficiency and their productivity so that they can compete more effectively in this age of digital disruption. The second track is about innovation. And in this track, we have a lot of programs that are again aimed at both law firms and in-house legal departments, as well as the legal tech enterprises, or what we call legal technologists, to help them imagine how to deliver legal services in a new way that can leverage technology and can help them become more competitive in the future economy. The third track is an accelerator program. So what we do is we encourage our legal technologists to come up with business plans that they can execute in order for them to grow or expand into new markets. So within this accelerator program, we provide market intelligence into the regional countries and the rest of ASEAN. In fact, last week we just launched a State of Legal Innovation in the Asia Pacific report. This is actually a report, an in-depth study into the market needs of each jurisdiction in Southeast Asia and beyond. So currently we have 9 countries covered in the report, and readers will be able to gain a grasp for what are the market needs and the requirements, as well as the opportunities for collaboration in each of these markets. The other area that we support our legal technology startups, especially the foreign ones, is in the area of being a one-stop shop, a resource that can help them not only access the Singapore market, but also to develop capabilities in conjunction with our local technology community and helping them to plug into the investment community in Singapore. So you may know that Singapore is a financial and banking hub, and there is also a very active VC and investment community in Singapore. So there's actually quite a lot of investor cash or resources that is just looking for good opportunities to invest in. So what FLIP does is, in our programming, we run a lot of events that will introduce investors to the startups that we are incubating or accelerating. We also conduct technology demos for these startups so that the investment community can understand what are the products and services that they are creating. Now, especially for foreign startups, Flip is also an accredited partner of Enterprise Singapore. So if a foreign startup chooses to join Flip and to grow its business through our program, we can provide all of the regulatory support to this startup in terms of registering a business in Singapore, in terms of all the immigration requirements. So for example, Flip is the authorized agency within our legal sector to grant an entrepreneur pass. So it's a special kind of visa that allows foreign entrepreneurs to come to Singapore, stay for periods of 6 months and beyond to develop their new businesses and using Singapore as a jumping off point. Flip also is the accredited accelerator partner for our government agency that is focused on growing small and medium-sized businesses. So under this program, there is a special one-to-one government matching in terms of fundraising. So for example, if a foreign startup were to come to Singapore and they are able to secure $10,000, for example, in terms of funding, the Singapore government will also match that with $10,000. Of course, there are conditions attached to this. There will be a requirement for local shareholding in the company and even some recruitment or jobs that you have to make available to some of the locals in Singapore. But I think this is a very attractive program if a foreign startup is looking for government support and looking for investments. This is a fantastic program. And Flip essentially serves as that one-stop shop to connect foreign startups with not only the ecosystem in Singapore, the technology ecosystem, the regulatory environment, but also we can connect you with customers. So the Singapore Academy of Law is the umbrella organization for all legal professionals. So essentially all lawyers, all in-house counsel, members of the bench are all required to be members. And under our membership, we have all of the law firms, all of the companies that operate headquarters in Singapore, and they have large legal departments. So if your enterprise is in the space of providing legal technology solutions, which will include IP technology, regulations technology, or compliance technology, this is again a great platform for you to plug into because you will get immediate access to the market. So that's very briefly how Flip can provide support to foreign startups coming into Singapore and looking to use Singapore as a jumping off point into the market. Earlier this year, we signed up our first Russian legal tech startup. Well, it's not really a startup, it's IP Chain. So they were introduced to us by the Šelkový Innovation Center. And we are working closely with IP Chain to see how we can help IP Chain establish its presence in Singapore, as well as to venture into the greater Southeast Asian market. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your presentation. This was a very interesting information, and there's very much in common with what Daria was going to tell us. So Daria Lipatova, representing Šelkový, and Daria will speak about accelerators that will facilitate the development of the Russian market. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the work of the session. I was going to give some examples, and Paul gave probably the best possible example of our cooperation with Singapore, between Singapore and Russia. So I would like to start with some general facts, what we are doing in Šelkový, so that you could have some idea of our profile, and then I will focus on the success of our residents, being not an exception to the rule, but rather a law. And we've been working hard to achieve this goal. We've been working for 9 years. We are a mature organization, and we create a business environment, physical environment for companies. We are a city, actually, with its own infrastructure for companies, for entrepreneurs. We have business incubators. We have partners partner organizations, offering wonderful opportunities for wonderful venues for different events. And we also provide some privileges and benefits and support measures that we provide to businesses envisaged by the special law on Školkovo Technopark. And this law actually describes us as and the benefits for our customers and benefits and partners. We export this culture, Školkovo Technopark culture in Russia. We create the so-called Big Školkovo. We go to regions and we are integrating with other neighboring zones, for instance, high school park zones around us. And we have a special program called Regional Školkovo. When we export our knowledge, our experience, our expertise and competencies, and we go to regions and work in regions in bigger Russian cities with 1 million of populations, and we conclude agreements of cooperation between Školkovo, the regional government, regional administration, and key institutions in the region. And the aim is to to mold entrepreneurs, businessmen of the future. And my part in Školkovo, my job at Školkovo is oriented towards providing support to export programs that Školkovo exports abroad, and our success is the success of our company. And today, out of 2,000 residents of Školkovo Foundation's 10%, which is 200 companies, have offices or representation offices abroad in other countries. And of course, we audit our companies and we understand where they are, how fast they have been developing. And Školkovo develops unique technologies that are patented. And at the moment, there are more than 1,600. These are both Russian and international patents received by our residents. And of course, I would like to say a little bit more about the instruments that we offer to our residents to go international. And first of all, I will start with boutique service, as we call it. It's a tailor-made service for each company, for each resident company of Školkovo. We meet a team of this or that company. We listen to their presentation of the international strategy, and then we provide our consultancy, and we offer them whatever service possible that they need. We offer special grants for their acceleration. And there's another very popular tool as participation in business missions. When we form such business missions of companies and we go to different countries, we do matchmaking between our companies and the companies of the country we visit. And then there is another direction which I like very much. It's community management, which I like a lot. And we are developing our partnership agreements, partnership networks, both in Russia and outside it. And Oleg, representing Školkovo Forum, will tell you a little bit more about the whole chain of events that Školkovo hosts. In a couple of months, we will invite more of you to come to us to the Startup Village, and then sometime later there will be a forum of open innovations this autumn. And in winter we are organizing events in Russian regions, and it will this campaign will be called Open Russia Startup Tour. And of course, it's a very good opportunity for me today to welcome our partners, our key partners. We are very honored to have Singapore as our partner. We work at the state level, and we participate in annual meetings of Intergovernmental Commission between Singapore and Russia. And we offer our ideas for the agenda of meetings. And we also cooperate with the Enterprise Singapore organization and other state agencies of the country. And we work with Action Community for Entrepreneurship. This is our key partner, and they are, just like us, unite all services, one-stop shop, as Paul said, and which is so important for startup companies. And one of the most interesting projects, which is called Accelerator, we launched it together with an Asian foundation, Enterprise Singapore, and Russian Expert Center, and Šelkový Foundation. And this is a very interesting project, and the first event will be organized this summer. And of course, it will be very interesting to listen to the presentation of one of our key partners who took part in our previous sessions on international programs, development programs, a couple of years ago in Startup Village. And I'm happy to welcome Martin, who have made a long way from Singapore to Kaliningrad, and maybe he could contribute say a few words about the work we do with the startup community. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, as you heard from Daria from Šelkový. I've had the pleasure to visit Russia and Moscow on a few occasions. I'm a management consultant. I work with Fortune 100 companies, primarily from a strategy point of view, but in the latter years,
То, что я видел в Шелковом, и мне кажется, это очень значимая инициатива. Я увижу развитие кластерной ментальности.
To participate. First of all, as we also heard from Singapore, when you kind of provide a very conducive environment for entrepreneurs to come here, to come to Singapore, to come to wherever they want to go. And why would they come? Why would you build a cluster? You will build a cluster, first of all, because you provide entrepreneurs with a very conducive environment for learning, to adapt new skill sets, so learn from the best practices. And how do you do that? I've seen that at Šelkový, various initiatives, for example, the Startup Village, which I've been part of 2 years ago, was fantastic. I've also been teaching in the Šelkový School of Management. A lot of stuff going on, because if you want to settle here, either as a Russian entrepreneur or a mix or a foreigner coming in here, you need to make sure that it's a very conducive place for fast acceleration. You also need to make sure that you hire international talents, very conducive to have advisors, best practices, people that have kind of done it before you. And then I think most importantly, and that is actually to have a global mindset. And how do you give a global mindset? What is a mindset really all about? That is about partly pushing entrepreneurs over the cliff. You rarely have to do that because they are hungry. They often stay a bit foolish, as we heard from Steve Jobs. You need to make sure that people accelerate very, very, very quickly. You kind of become what you say you are. We live in times where you're not necessarily going to work too slowly here. Yes, we're going to have it within the IP framework, the legal frameworks, things. We need to have the fundamentals right. But in order to create a startup these days, you need to move very, very fast, and you have to be very, very adaptive. I often compare, if you build those clusters and you want the entrepreneurs to succeed, I often compare it to a flight. Some of you might be pilots, some of you might have your license. I don't have my license yet, but it's a bit like a takeoff. You spend a lot of time on your checklists in terms of getting your fuel, your food, your security, all of that, and suddenly the plane is ready to go and the pilots line up at the runway after a bit of taxiing. This is often at the juncture where you would see whether a startup would succeed or not. Because at this juncture, you're going to take two very important decisions. First of all, you need to make sure you cannot look back any longer on your checklist. Two, you need to make sure that you reach, first of all, velocity 1. Velocity 1 is a speed around 180 kilometers an hour, where after that, you will jump into the fence, you will overtake the runway. More importantly, velocity 2, 200 kilometers, 220 kilometers an hour, that's where you then where you start to get airborne. After that juncture, there are no other route to go. You have to get up to 10,000 feet before you're safe. How does that apply to entrepreneurship? I would argue, if you look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs, startups in the world, whether they become unicorns one day, whether you support them through early stage investing, Series A to all the way to Series whatever, doesn't matter. That's because they have had this kind of almost an insane ability to scale up very quickly, to learn from that cluster, but also to move really, really fast. And you can take all the time to line up at the runway, but once you are ready for takeoff, the pilot actually look at each other, they kind of just make that nod in the eyes of his co-pilot. That's where you're good to go, and you only have 10 seconds almost to disagree or to abandon the flight. So build a strong cluster, but also make sure that you nurture, most importantly, not only the skill sets, but also the mindset of the entrepreneurs, because that's in the end what is going to make and break. So compare it to a flight. Once you're lined up at the runway, there's really no other route to go than to succeed and to become a unicorn. So I'm being very motivated. I'm very grateful, first of all, to have been invited here, but also from the work and the contributions I've done to Šelkový at the very kind invitation of Daria and her wonderful team.
Спасибо, Пол, Мартин и Дарья. В принципе, вы говорили об очень важной вещи, о поиске партнеров и о том, как можно облегчить существование различных стартапов вне родной среде, в том числе и законодательно, о чем говорил Пол. Но на пути любого экономического партнерства стоит еще одна проблема, и именно
any economic partnership, and a lot depends on customs. And I address my question to Ludmila Teselkina, who is very experienced in customs operations, from simple ones to even space equipment. And today we speak about intellectual products and customs regulations, about the import and export of goods, where we need to declare royalties. Thank you very much I want to wish everybody to go international and be successful on the international market, and I don't want customs to be a barrier. And that's why my today's presentation is about the latest tendencies in customs control and what the Federal Customs Office and the legislation that the Federal Customs Office approved last year. And I will tell you a few words about the latest developments in customs regulations. And I would say that this is a very positive development when it comes to customs duties. For instance, I understand that there might be some questions from my colleagues, but I'm sure it takes time. We just introduced this new legislation, and we need some time to perfect the mechanisms and procedures envisaged by this legislation. And I'm sure businesses will help us do it. So in March 2019, there was a meeting of our collegiates and of the customs of Russia, and we assessed the results of the work of Russian customs for 1 year, and we uploaded this report on our website. And the major trends identified by our colleagues during this meeting was not only tax evasion, but not including licensing payments into customs declarations. And it means that in 2019, special attention will be paid to licenses. And I want you to start thinking about it already today, and if you jot it down, mark the importance of this issue, because you have to calculate correctly the structure of your licensing payments, which will be included then in your customs documents, and you have to take it into account when calculating the economic efficiency of your company. You will minimize your risks. So today the situation is the following one. So if a company doesn't, being unaware or intentionally doesn't include royalties or other payments into the customs declarations, then customs authority authorities identify this breach, and they issue an administrative statement, and then this company is fined in court. And now we have a growing tendency, a growing number of cases in court, in the arbitrary courts of the Russian Federation on this matter. And why is it a complicated topic to discuss? So every time when we calculate this licensing payment, this is a unique case. Each case is unique. Our regulator tries to sort of unify, try to give us some methods of calculating this payment, but sometimes it's difficult to calculate, or we don't know how to do it, or it depends on certain conditions of the deal concluded, and we understand all these difficulties. But if you look at the adopted legislation, especially the one that came into effect 2018, then you can use the provisions of this legislation and still find a way out. Of course, this legislation is not perfect, because I don't know how we can postpone the calculation of the customs value. It can be postponed only for 15 months. And when it can be done, it's already too late, or companies will not be able or are not able to collect all the necessary documentation. But still, we should use the provisions of the law adopted last year. So this was the major focus of my very short presentation. First, companies have to understand that licensing payments are to be taken into account when calculating customs value. Then this calculation is a difficult procedure, but if you do it in advance, before you start importing or exporting your goods, then your international cooperation will not be hampered by customs. Thank you very much. So customs gives an okay sign. So Oksana, I think you can develop this Ludmila's presentation a bit further.
The thing is that the monetary control or currency control must be provided every time when we deal with international companies or international business. But unfortunately, many issues are not regulated, and they become the source for unpleasant issues on both sides, on the public authorities and rights holders. Sometimes the situation shows that the patent holders are physical people, are physical entities, and they don't have the status of an entity which legally has to be controlled, monetary controlled. And the situation goes like the public authorities study the activities on patent, so they study the inventor activity as the entrepreneurial activity. And that's why the copyright holder in practice sees that the requirements of the currency code or currency legislation are not observed. And today the legislation is undergoing serious changes, and it becomes softer, or it softens the responsibility, and it changes the sanctions which are presupposed for the copyright holder. And now the copyright holder has a chance to conclude agreements with foreign entities, with foreign companies, and at the same time they can address the Russian Expert Center, which is the institution providing the protection for the exporters. So such companies can apply to this center so that the measures of currency regulations and currency protection can be observed. We also have to deal with the protection of the inventors' interests protection. Even in the Soviet time, in the Soviet time, we used to have an inventor who got the status of the federal or national inventor, and now he concluded several agreements on returning his his copyrights, but unfortunately the foreign companies were not able to comply with the requirement and were not able to return the registered rights. And our public authorities decided that if the inventor is not registered as the physical entity or as the legal entity, so his claim to return his copyright, his rights back, were considered to be a way of getting some profit, and in this case, the inventor was expected to pay very high fines to the Russian Federation, but as soon as we were able to prove that the inventor's activity is not the commercial activity, and having invented some project and having registered some object or some sample or know-how, the physical entity does not mean any commercial activity. So if it's the physical person who is the inventor and he registers his own invention, it's not expected to be commercialized. That's why I advise everyone who is going to conclude the agreement. You should better go to the Russian Expert Center and get a qualified consultation on what is the best way to carry out this work. Even if the issues are quite complicated, like the currency control, also it's better to get some professional consultation. The copyright owners must observe the banking legislation of the Russian Federation, which is a matter of change, kind of a common, an often matter of change, a frequent matter of change. But you must understand your own responsibility, and as soon as you want to go global, you have to understand how to protect your own rights. And as Ludmila has said, you have to foresee and calculate the possibilities to lower the risk. Thank you. Oksana, I don't understand why you haven't shown your presentation. Well, actually, my original topic was a little bit different. I have changed it a little bit. It was my original topic was how to protect the market from the counterfeit production. But if I have a couple of minutes, I can show you the presentation, or just I can tell you something about the counterfeit protection from counterfeit goods. So why do we have to protect our market from some counterfeit goods? Our moderator is absolutely right, saying that Russia is a big importer of intellectual property. I was speaking about the currency control when it comes to the export, and now I will dwell a little bit on import. And so that the intellectual property is used to its full capacity and used in the right way, and be useful not only for the copyright owner but to the customer as well, we have to protect our market from the counterfeit goods. We have been discussing these issues, and every time when we address it, we tackle upon some different aspects of the topic. If we study the most efficient ways of protection of the internal market, of the domestic market, how can I use my presentation? Yeah, how can I use my presentation and change the slides? So, yeah. We have got several efficient systems how to protect our domestic market. The first one is the protection or the support from the governmental authorities, public authorities, and the institutions which are responsible for that are the customs authorities. We have got efficient programs on the compliance, on the product compliance to the registers. So this program suggests that all the goods, especially the strategically important goods, must be protected and must comply with the with the technical documentation, technical standards according to the norms of according to the legislation norms. Another quite important and quite efficient way of protection is the court protection or legal protection. If we think about the protection of the market, we must involve the community, the customers, some public, some public institutions which are enabled or just which are to protect, to provide some assistance to the customers. We know that there are some cases when counterfeit goods were delivered to the domestic market, and if we are to stop such activity, we must make people aware that their reputation might suffer if they, if they import some counterfeit goods. How do we work with it? Sometimes we make some trial purchases, or we visit some online offers. We visit some online sites to check some online offers so that we can identify whether it is an original good, an original service, or it's the counterfeit goods and service. Our public administration fights with the counterfeit goods, counterfeit production, and they have a set of tools how to identify if some items are counterfeit or not. So we provide the appraisal. We provide that we carry out the testing, and the testing is done by some expert commissions, and it's not only about some special authorities which must conduct such expert assessment, but it can be like local or small organization which can also carry out some testing. So then the trademark must be included into the register of intellectual property. And if we identify some counterfeit goods in domestic market, then we have to go to the arbitrary court with the lawsuits on violation of the intellectual property rights. As soon as you find out the facts of violating intellectual property rights, or if you find out some counterfeit goods, then it will be quite efficient to go to Rospotrebnadzor, to the surveillance institution dealing with the intellectual property rights. there was some interesting case when the Russian market saw some equipment, some construction equipment, or some decor elements made from PVC. And the project, or just the documentation, said that the material was inflammable, so that it just puts itself off after, or puts itself out after several seconds when it started burning. But unfortunately, this material was not inflammable. It was very highly flammable, and you need to take some, and it's easily flammable. So that means that the material was not was absolutely unsuitable for the purposes that it was meant for. So it could not be used in construction. So then we initiated the procedure of the product return, so that we can stop the delivery and we can stop the distribution of this product. And just the product was returned to the producer, and all the responsible people were just found guilty, and they were punished. They got some sort of punishment. The European Economic Community countries and Russia also signed an agreement on marking or coding the goods. Now we have got a pilot project on coding or marking the footwear, and we have got the compulsory marking of fur coats. And in summer, we are going to start some new programs of marking some other imported goods. I think that these are simple measures which can assist us in fighting the counterfeit production.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and you mentioned the concept of digitalization. So it's my pleasure and privilege to give the floor to a representative of Kazakhstan. And the Russian word цифровизация came from Kazakhstan after they launched the process of digitalization. And they in Kazakhstan they use цифровая экономика instead of digital economy the way we do in Russia. But in Kazakhstan, one of their policies is called strategies is used the digital Silk Road. So I would like to ask Maksat, so how do you see further integration of intellectual potential of the two countries, and what is the role of applied science in this work? So I would like first of all to thank the organizers of the forum, all the participants for inviting me. I represent the National Academy of Sciences of Kazakhstan, the Institute of Information Technologies. And from the very beginning, I want once again to thank for inviting me to take part in this forum, and I want to thank Mr. Barkhatov personally. So when I arrived in Kaliningrad during my very first day, I was at a loss. I didn't know where I was, what kind of event it is, and because I made plenary, I was a keynote speaker in 20 countries, and I spoke about research, science, and then when I came here, I tried to understand what is meant by intellectual property, and then what am I, a scientist, doing here? But the more I listened, the more interested I got. So thank you very much for this most interesting event. So in our institute in Kazakhstan, our institute is the only specialized institute focusing on information technologies. So we are a research institution, and we used to say that in informatics, in informatics, there are no breakthroughs, but it turned out to be false. And our institute just is a living proof. We have, our institute employs 400 employees, and more than 60% of these people are young researchers, young specialists in information technologies. And in the 90s, when the situation in the country was a bit difficult, young researchers preferred banks or private companies as a place of their employment. And now they come back. And I want to say that we can offer now decent salaries to our young talents, and it's much higher than that in, for instance, other countries. And at the moment, we cooperate with more than 20 countries around the world, and our young researchers have an opportunity to work in international teams. And some time ago, I was in Moscow and signed an agreement with the Russian Institute of People's Friendship, with the Moscow State University, with Roscosmos, and other institutes, higher educational institutions of Moscow and Russia. And I'm looking forward to having similar agreements with Poland. And in May. And now our country starts going digital, and we have elaborated a number of programs and projects. For instance, our vision, digital vision for 2020, and all state services should be provided in the electronic formats. All exchange of documentations should be minimized, and it should be digital. And then interactive, providing interactive services to the population of Kazakhstan. And this project has been implemented for a couple of years already, and we already see the first results, positive results. And the major result is that we are becoming more transparent, there's less corruption in the country, and we are constructing a road, a highway to from China to Western Europe via the territory of our country, and this is the embodiment of the idea of digital Silk Road. And we are going to catch up with the most advanced countries, digitally advanced countries, and our task is to provide a good and sustainable broadband internet to better implement DWDM technologies, 3G, offering 3G coverage, 3G and 4G coverage, and enhancing our TV and radio network, including the ones provided by satellites. And these are very ambitious tasks that we're facing at the moment, and we actively involve companies, private business, and we have roadmaps. We are working on the program of smart cities, smart villages, so the country goes digital. So when we speak about digitalization of industries, so by 2025, the production capacity will be comparable with 135 countries of the world, and our country will have a comparable, very competitive industry. So the way we have an action plan how it should be done, and it should be done using a wide variety of digital tools. Excuse my interrupting you. You're running short of time. Thank you. Our institute, the IT Technology Institute, at the moment, even though we specialize in fundamental science, but we do a lot of applied research. Unlike other institutes, we we managed to 25% of our revenue comes from outside the institute, so we conclude contracts with many countries, and we cooperate with more than 25 countries of the world: Russia, the United States, Japan, and many other countries. And I would like to take this opportunity and invite all of you to a conference 25th of September. And representatives of 20 countries have already agreed to participate in the conference. Please check the website of our university, of our institute, and if you feel like joining us, please welcome. Thank you very much.
Мое предупреждение, напоминание о регламенте относилось не столько к Максуту, сколько к нашему следующему выступающему. Я хочу предоставить слово Александру Лебедеву, это мой коллега с телевидения. Я знаю, как мы умеем говорить, поэтому прошу вас держаться хронометража, о котором мы с вами договорились.
Да, поэтому, наверное, мы будем говорить об информационно-идеологических процессах, которые мы пытаемся продвигать через масс-медиа, поэтому давайте, чтобы сократить регламент, посмотрим сразу презентационный ролик. Пожалуйста.
Она говорила про Казахстан.
Да, она все время Казахстан говорит.
А он из Киргизии. Я выключила.
Азия. Яркое сочетание причудливых узоров и строгих цветов, самых высоких гор и самых протяженных равнин на нашей планете, глубочайших вод Мирового океана и бесплодных пустынь, мегаполисов-муравейников, небоскребов и затерянных на краю света поселений. Арабская вязь и иероглифы, многоголосье сотен языков и тысяч наречий. Древние цивилизации и передовые технологии, старейшие финансовые институты и самый быстро растущий рынок мировой экономики наших дней. Азия – невероятный калейдоскоп, самое большое живописное полотно на Земле. Россия – перекресток двух миров глобальных цивилизаций в 21 веке по-новому открывается для Азии. 1 июня на Петербургском экономическом форуме дан старт телеканалу «Большая Азия». Вещание на всей территории России по спутниковым и кабельным каналам. Телеканал «Большая Азия» покажет телезрителям бескрайний мир Востока. Это многостороннее движение потоков информации, ежедневные новости региона, информация о событиях российско-азиатского политического, делового и гуманитарного сотрудничества. Российский взгляд на события, оценки и планы. В эфире политики, дипломаты, эксперты и бизнесмены. Финансовые новости и аналитика, особенности азиатского рынка и хитрости восточного базара. Документальные и художественные фильмы, познавательные тележурналы и развлекательные передачи. Потоковая мультимедиа и доступ к контенту без ограничений через онлайн-вещание на сайте bigasia.ru. Голоса, языки и люди, национальные цвета и их тончайшие оттенки. Впервые на русском для российского телезрителя. На телеканале «Большая Азия» и сайте bigasia.ru.
Alexander, of course, it's better to see you once, but it's good to hear from you. Do you understand that right, that Big Asia is not just a TV channel, but it's a communication platform. It's not only a channel for the viewers. Of course, yes, that's right. Distinguished colleagues, you understand that the way to business can start with understanding and knowledge. As we like to see, the way to business goes through knowledge. And if we think about Eurasian integration and Eurasian cooperation, of course, we would like to create the platform. Our TV channel works for a year and 10 months, and we have created the platform so that our Asian partners can enter the market. And we are quite unique in this. You know that well, in spite of the latest 8-10 years when we have been speaking about turning to the east, the informational field in our country is quite is more oriented to Europe and the United States. You understand that every morning we get the European agenda. We don't understand why Trump is building the wall between the United States and Mexico. But well, we don't think much about Asia. We don't know the Asian news, or we don't think about Asian market, and we don't get this positive news, which must be brought to B2B, B2C, and other formats. That's why we have been analyzing. We had been analyzing this issue for several years, and we created a channel and a platform, and we are the only channel which gives the Eurasian news. Every year or every hour, we give a news bulletin, which gives the major understanding of what's going on in Asia. It's a unique product in the market, and we invite everybody to participate. Well, first, probably as viewers, as consumers of internet resource, and then probably as partners, because well, people sometimes understand the role of mass media in a very simple way, like, well, just bringing in some news. Well, today we have the satellite broadcasting, and we are represented on all the platforms, and our audience is only TV, not only TV audience. We have got more than 32 million people, and well, actually, we can be found in 76% of internet platforms and media platforms. Well, so we are inviting everybody to participate, so you can come with your own format, with your own news, and we give the countries and businesses, together with their production, come to be represented with us. Yeah, so just it's about Asian integration and about European and Asian integration. So we view Eurasia not as the Far East region, but as the region from Singapore to London. Yeah. So we are now in the track which is called Silk Route, and it's more about Chinese development, but it's much wider. In our understanding, it's much wider. Last year, we created in Xi'an, which is the center of Silk Route. Probably you've heard about Terracotta Army. So in that city, the Association of Silk Route was created there, and we are the only one who represents Russia there. And we decided to create, well, a tourist, or just we decided to create the, or decided to access them through tourism. You know that tourism is a very rapidly growing area in China, not only internal tourism, but but outbound tourism. Yeah, so, and it means that we would like to create the information support for tourists, for Chinese tourists, so that when they go abroad, they can see all the places that they can visit. So, and this association decided to create a program for, well, Chinese viewers, where every country can represent their own place and their own culture. So that was one of integrational projects, which I would like to draw your attention to. Another thing is when you promote the good promotes outside the country, that's great. But that's what all the companies do. Like, well, Huawei company, which promotes everything, or which promotes the phones, or which promotes the quality of the product, which promotes just their brand. But when we talk to them, they said that it's much more interesting to promote not only the product, not only the item, but the item together with the culture. Because when people buy some item produced by this company, they would understand the culture of the place where they come from, when you look at the countries of Eurasia, when you look at these 49 countries of Eurasian cooperation, and when you offer the platform for the countries to speak about themselves, it means that we make the major contribution into the communication, into this cultural business communication, and we provide the best resource for the countries and for the participants who come to us. When we speak about the digital communication, it would be absolutely impossible not to mention blockchain development. So blockchain has been known to us for some time. But now it's the most relative, most urgent. So the floor is given to Kadir. The floor is given to Kadir Kurtuluş.
Вы передавали ваши слайды?
For the slides?
Да.
Did you upload your presentation?
Спасибо. Thank you very much for this opportunity. This is my 5th time in Russia after State Duma and Rospatent events. As always, your hospitality is wonderful. Thank you very much. Most of the people speaking about digitalization and also the innovations and startups, I would like to show you how we make a framework for this. It's all about blockchain, and blockchain is a tool for the world digital single market, and my presentation will be about this tool. I would like to go to the history, okay? And in the history, there is a road. It's a Silk Road. Silk Road is 1,400-year-old road. You know why? Because there is a mutual recognition. There is mutual benefit and mutual interest on one single road. That's why it's an effective and 1,000-year-old road. But now the roads are changing. Digital roads are coming. It's coming with the blockchain technology. And Uzbek proverb says, there are two major ways in the universe. One in the sky, you know it, the Milky Way, and the second one in the earth is the Silk Road. What about the digital roads? It become real with the blockchain technology, because blockchain technology gives us trust, security, and transparency. If we get these tools, then we make the digital ways of the global trade. But there is a race for this opportunity. European Union, they make one single visa, one currency, and one digital single market. And the saving with this digital single market was 415 billion euros per year. This means those countries, the European Union digital single market countries, have more 415 billion euros to compete with you. It's impossible to compete with this savings. But it takes long time to make the digital single market for European Union, but like 50 years. But suddenly they change it. They signed a blockchain protocol. After 50 years, you make a digital single market, but you change the framework of this digital single market. Why? Because of the blockchain, because of the revolution of the blockchain. And they already invested 80 million euros for it, and they will also invest, and 28 countries trying to make their own blockchain protocol, and this also they want to expand this protocol and they want to impose it to other countries. But the other countries, like Eurasian countries, need their own strategies, their own blockchain strategies. Otherwise, there is no competition with them. Blockchain is an opportunity to establish the world digital single market, as we said. So after those blockchain protocols and partnerships in the European Union, what to do? There is two options. One is to follow them and to watch what they are doing and to accept their protocols, their rules, their standards. And the second one is to establish our own protocols, our own blockchain protocols with the Eurasian countries. The blockchain is a new technology. You may have the best blockchain protocol, but it's not just about the technology. It's also about mutual recognition. Because you may have the best blockchain protocols, but if the other countries or the other partners doesn't recognize your protocol, then it's the same as the current system. That's why the mutual recognition is the key point. That's why many countries come together for this protocol. And last, you see Moscow and Istanbul and other countries. This is a world map. There's train roads there. The blockchain is the future. In these train roads, European Union is going to be the same color. So billions of euros savings. But if you want to make the transactions with Moscow and Istanbul, Moscow and Beijing, Beijing to Jakarta, Jakarta to Kazakhstan, Almaty and Istanbul, then this should be with the blockchain technology, because blockchain technology gives us the security, the trust, and the transparency. And there is one proverb, a Chinese proverb: if you want to be rich, you have to do the roads first. The physical roads done, and the more roads coming with the One Belt, One Road initiative. And what about the digital waste? What about the digital roads? Digital roads can be done with the blockchain technology, with the blockchain infrastructure. If we build this infrastructure, then we have a financial defense for our economic systems, because the blockchain changed the whole economic structure. Why? Let me show you why it changed the economy structure. And there is cash in my pocket, okay? This is money. We call it money, we call it cash. But I see there is a paper here. Why this is valuable? Because there is a record in the United States central banks. There is a record with regard to this money. That's why I use it as a cash. So keeping this record is very important. But blockchain changed the way of keeping the records. No need for governments. So there is a new economy structure is coming. If this is coming, then our countries has to be ready for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Кадир. Я благодарю всех участников.
Thank you, Kadir, and I'm really grateful to all the participants of our session, but I would like Anatoly Semenov, Ombudsman on Intellectual Property, to finalize our work today. Yes, certainly, the situation with roads in our Eurasian space, with physical roads, can be better or worse, but very often we see the obstacles in some rights. or regulations which are not understood very well, sometimes incompatibility of some regulations or some issues. One of the issues which I'm going to discuss in the next panel is devoted to the parallel import. That's the movement of goods with the trademarks or patents, but the original ones, which you bought in some other country, and when you bring it in Russia, so the original one can be claimed by the copyright owner, and it can be even, or you can probably you can even have to hand it in. So I think that when the Silk Route was used as the way to transfer goods, so it brought the markets together. But our many regulations sometimes bring some kind of disunity into the markets, like with the sanctions which were levied on Russia. So sometimes you have to buy the goods in some other countries, or sometimes you have to produce something parallel, and that brings us to some issues of intellectual property and to some regulations that we must introduce to the issue of intellectual property. For us to make it more, to make the world a closer space, and to bring the flows of goods closer to the traffic in our roads, to the flow of traffic in our roads, we have to make a huge step forward in creating the common trust space, common trust area space, and I think that new technologies like blockchain technologies in coding or marking the goods will assist us to do that. So it means that all the hazards and all the risks of bringing the parallel goods could be minimized then. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to finalize this work of this session today, and I welcome you to participate our next track. So just if it were not for the short time, of course, we could continue our talk even longer. So thank you. I'm really grateful to all the participants. It hasn't been much of the discussion, but I think that the information that we have heard today is really very important, not only to the specialists, but to the consumers who live here in this economic space.